You really think Grandma left anything to you? My brother Daniel laughed in the courthouse hallway. My mother folded her arms and pushed a paper toward me. Sign it and stop embarrassing the family. I looked at the judge's door and said quietly, let's just wait until the will is read. My name is Rachel Bennett, and I'm 36 years old. I work as a public school librarian in a small town where everyone seems to know everyone else's business. My days are usually calm. I shelve books, help kids find stories they love, and breathe in the quiet smell of old pages and dust that fills the library every morning. It's not a glamorous job, but it's honest work, and I've always been proud of it. Growing up, my family never saw me as the impressive one. That title always belonged to my older brother, Daniel. He ran a contracting business and drove a shiny truck that he loved to show off. At every family dinner, someone would say, "Daniel's doing great things." People nodded. They praised him. I sat quietly at the table. They called me the quiet one who read too much. Maybe they were right. Books were easier than people. But when our grandmother got sick 3 years ago, something strange happened. Daniel was busy. My parents were busy. The relatives who praised him so loudly suddenly had excuses. I was the one who drove Grandma to doctor appointments. I was the one who carried groceries into her kitchen and sat beside her bed in the hospital while machines hummed softly around us. We talked about simple things during those nights. Memories, recipes, old stories about her town. She never treated me like the quiet extra in the room. I never thought about money or inheritance during that time. What mattered to me was showing up for someone who had always shown kindness to me. I wasn't rich or glamorous, but I had something they didn't expect. If you've ever been the quiet one in your family, the one people underestimate, you probably know how that feels. Sometimes people mistake silence for weakness. If that's happened to you, hit that subscribe button. Tell me in the comments if someone ever assumed you were weak just because you stayed calm. And if you've been in that position, click hype or leave a like. After Grandma passed away, our family gathered in her living room to talk about the estate. The room smelled faintly like the lavender soap she used to keep by the sink. Her chair was still near the window, the same place where she used to sit and watch the street. Daniel walked in like he owned the house already. "All right," he said, clapping his hands once. "Let's get this settled. I'll handle the estate." My mother nodded immediately. "That makes sense." I looked around the room, confused. "The will reading is scheduled at the courthouse next week." Daniel laughed like I had told a joke. "Why waste everyone's time? We already know how this ends." He leaned forward and tapped the table. "Grandma trusted me with money." I stayed calm. She also made an official will. My mother sighed. "Rachel, just sign your share over. You don't need the money the way your brother does." Daniel slid a folder across the table toward me. "Simple paperwork, just confirming you're giving up your claim." I didn't touch the papers. "I'd rather wait for the will reading," I said. His smile disappeared. "Don't start a problem where there isn't one," he snapped. A few days later, we had dinner with extended family. The table was full of voices and clinking forks. I tried to stay quiet and finish my meal. Then Daniel raised his glass. "You know what's funny?" he said loudly. "Rachel thinks Grandma left her something important." Several people laughed. He shook his head. "Everyone here knows Grandma would never trust Rachel with real money." My face burned. The room suddenly felt too warm. But I didn't argue. I just looked down at my plate and said softly, "We'll see what the court says." From that moment on, the countdown to the court date began. The first betrayal came quickly. A week later, I stopped by Grandma's house to check the mailbox. My key didn't work. The locks had been changed. Daniel stepped out onto the porch with his arms crossed. "You're not welcome here unless you apologize." "For what?" "For dragging the family into court." I walked back to my car without answering. The second betrayal came during a family barbecue. My aunt had invited everyone, and I hoped things would stay calm. They didn't. Daniel stood near the grill telling a story. "You remember when Rachel moved into Grandma's spare bedroom? She practically lived there like a permanent guest." People laughed again. I stood near the fence and felt every word hit like a stone. The third betrayal was quieter. My mother called me late one evening. Her voice sounded tired. "Rachel, your brother needs this money more than you do." I stayed silent. "Families don't fight in court." "So you want me to give up?" I asked. "It would make things easier." I stared at the phone for a long moment. "I'll see you at the will reading," I said calmly. By then, I had started to notice something in Daniel's voice every time he talked about the inheritance. Confidence. Too much confidence. Months before Grandma passed away, we had a quiet conversation in her kitchen. The afternoon sun came through the window and lit the table between us. She held a stack of papers in her hand. "Rachel," she said softly, "some people only see what they want to see, but I made sure the truth is written down." I didn't understand at first. She asked me to sign as a witness while her lawyer reviewed a document. I didn't ask questions. She looked peaceful, like someone who had already made her mind. I never mentioned that moment to anyone. What my family didn't know was that Grandma had updated her will shortly before she passed. She saw everything. The hospital visits, the empty holidays when no one showed up, the silence when she needed help. I promised her I wouldn't argue with the family about it. "Let the truth speak when the time comes," she had said. So I stayed quiet. A few days before the court hearing, I met Mr. Howard, the lawyer who had handled Grandma's legal work for years. His office smelled like paper and old wood. When he saw me, he smiled warmly. "Rachel," he said, shaking my hand, "your grandmother spoke highly of you." We sat across from each other while he organized some files. "You were there for her," he said gently. "That meant a lot." I nodded, unsure what to say. Meanwhile, Daniel was telling relatives that I would walk away with maybe a few $1,000s. He was already planning renovations to the house. I heard the stories through cousins and neighbors. It didn't bother me anymore. Arrogance has a strange way of growing louder right before it collapses. Before I left his office, Mr. Howard looked at me carefully. "Tomorrow, in court, the judge will read the final version of the will." I thanked him and stepped outside. The truth was close now. The courtroom was quiet the next morning. Daniel leaned toward me and whispered, "Ready to lose, Rachel?" I didn't answer. The judge began reading the will slowly. Small donations came first. A charity here, a distant cousin there. Daniel relaxed in his chair. Then the judge reached the final section. This document contains 6 pages of final property instructions. The room became silent. The judge cleared his throat and continued. "Your grandmother wrote a statement explaining that Rachel Bennett cared for her daily during her illness." Daniel shifted in his chair. The judge continued reading. "Your grandmother wrote that she watched carefully to see who showed up and who stayed away." My brother's smile faded. Then the judge spoke the words that changed everything. "The savings account totaling $180,000 and the house will go directly to Rachel Bennett." Daniel jumped up from his chair. "That's a mistake," he said loudly. The judge looked at him calmly. "The document is signed, witnessed, and legally verified." The room stayed silent. For the first time in years, Daniel had nothing to say. I simply thanked the judge and Mr. Howard. Outside the courthouse, Daniel refused to look at me. My mother tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come easily anymore. I walked down the steps slowly and breathed the fresh air. The inheritance wasn't just money. It was proof that someone had seen the truth all along. I used part of the money to repair the house and keep Grandma's library exactly the way she left it. Sometimes I sit in her old chair and remember those quiet nights when she told stories about the past. They thought being quiet meant being weak. But sometimes the quiet ones are simply waiting for the truth to speak. If your family has ever tried to pressure you about money or inheritance, you know how painful that can feel. Share your story in the comments and tell me what happened. Subscribe if you want to hear more stories like this, and click hype to help this story reach others who need it. Your story has power too. If this one connected with you, subscribe and share your journey in the comments. Every hype you give this video helps someone else feel less alone. Thank you for being here and for listening.